Alrighty, cool. Recording's working. Hello, everyone. My name is Luke Parkhurst, and my partner is Simran, and we did Radiosity. Now, before we go any farther, I am going to show you a quick clip on what the Radiosity project was supposed to look like, or, well, does look like. We had some errors when it came to compiling, especially on different machines, but this is mostly what it's supposed to look like on Simran's machine. Now, we loosely based this off of Assignment 5 and Lab 9. As you can see, we have multiple objects in here, some of which you'll recognize. Now, Lab 9 we had originally based it off of because the multiple light structures. And it gave us plenty of light to work with, but it didn't work with the normal and diffuse mappings for specular lighting. For a bit of creativity, we added in some of our own objects, or attempted to, as you can see by that little cyborg just kind of spinning about. But ultimately, when it came to specular lighting, Lab 9 didn't show the specular lighting like we wanted. Assignment 5 had the TBN matrix within the shader though, and that would actually set the normal mappings and help with the specular lighting. So this is mostly based off of Lab 5. As you can see right here, there's actual shading in the corners as the light hits the walls and the objects become darker or lighter depending on where they are within it. Now, there were some issues when transferring along, mostly due to a GitHub repo corruption. That actually set us back quite a bit, and we had almost lost a lot of our data. But we recovered back from it, and to show you exactly what it looks like, assignments, CS53. Inside here, we are working with Radiosity V1. Now, we created 3 different Radiosities in an attempt to play around with it. Radiosity V2 was our attempt using the Lab 9 template, where it worked, but we didn't get the lighting as we wanted. Going into Radiosity V2 here. Might help if I spelled Python correctly. We're just going to do a quick rebuild and see if I can't show you what it looks like, unless there were some corruption errors within this file as well. We did unfortunately face a few of them. Oh. Just gotta change that. That's one of the issues with the compiler errors is that her machine automatically makes changes and adjustments as needed, whereas my machine does not. So just to give an example of Radiosity V2, unless of course this had some errors. This might have faced some file corruptions, which is unfortunate. We had faced some file corruptions. I was hoping to show exactly how the point lights worked, but didn't actually use the specular lights. Well, we managed to make sure that we did save V1 though, which is one that we mostly base it off of. This was Assignment 5, and there's a number of assets that you might recognize. The original Radiosity was our own template files that we were creating from scratch, which we were excited about for the creativity, but we quickly became overwhelmed and had decided that using Assignment 5 or Lab 9 would help give us a structure to actually start and work off of. Now, what you may notice is different compared to Simran's version is hers properly loaded the wall textures. My version does not. We're a little unsure as to why this glitch, because it's the same exact code compiled under relatively the same compilers, but we got this glitch where the walls actually capture some of the texture files it works with. As you may recognize some of these, this is part of our cyborg architecture. So all the normal mappings on our cyborg are stuck to the walls. Now, technically this is a glitch, and technically it's not what it's supposed to look like, but we kept it because it actually helps with the specular lighting quite a bit. If you remember, off to the left wall, that was lit, while the back wall was actually darker, and to the right was more lit. Due to how the mapping is, thanks to the cyborg texture on the brick wall, you can actually see that the whitings now hit the back wall and the left wall while leaving the right wall darker. Now, curiously enough, when I've built this or had it run lab a number of times, sometimes it doesn't actually use the cyborg, but rather it will actually take normal mappings or texture files from some of the buildings. I've seen chapel and house both on the walls as well. And it changes the reflectivity of the single light structure within here. In fact, we'll actually do a quick rebuild just to see if we can't get that to happen. And here we go. As you can see, it's now using entirely different lighting. The left side is a bit darker, while the back and right side is now completely lit up, due to how normal mapping is working. This is technically not what the product's supposed to look like, but it helps illustrate and demonstrate exactly how these changes are made and how there's relatively differences in the lighting depending on the actual textures. That's part of the reason why we kept this. Now, we did run into some errors due to a GitHub corruption over in our objects file. We knew that there was a GitHub corruption. As you can see here, you can recognize some files such as chapel, house, windmill, and our cyborg that we have. Within cyborg, one of the key indicators that there was a corruption was in the material file. When it had replaced the material file actually 100% with the planet MTL. We do have a planet.mtl that we were trying to work with, but was not successful. It actually replaced all of the cyborg MTL with the planet MTL while still keeping it as cyborg.mtl for a name. So that's when we started realizing that there may have been some corruption, and we don't know quite where, if it was due to a branch merging or just a giant confliction error. We did, however, try to use other objects such as cube, hollow cube, and sphere, but even with the empty files, without the normal and diffuse mappings, they render them completely useless as the light doesn't reflect off them as it should. There were some issues that we wanted to add more objects such as tulip and barrel, just like cyborg, but we ran mostly into issues with the ppm file, namely that it was slightly different and how other ppm files were. We made some changes instead to our ppm file, or our ppm loader. It was just some mostly minor changes that actually won't be able to see quite easily. We'll go ahead and see if we can't try to bring it up though. So it's in image CPP. Some of the changes actually involved making sure that if there was more than one entry per line, it would actually take each character or all the characters, all the integers for the line, and read them correctly. This small change allowed it to read a lot more ppm formats and allowed us to actually use cyborg, and if we had a bit more time, probably decipher and try to use barrel. Tulip, while it was nice, the image file was too big, unfortunately, for the CPP to actually handle. We had some compiling issues trying to use it. Now, we did try one other project because we originally looked into it, but we were uncertain if we can complete it due to its difficulty. Where we already knew how to do Radiosity, the particle simulator was something new. In the particle simulator, we were hoping to actually try, and the